Welcome to More Than Renovating, a Renovate and real estate podcast. Our founder, Belinda Smith, talks to industry experts to provide you with the knowledge and information you need to make renovating for love and profit your reality. Belinda will also chat to some of her Renovation Mastery members who are just everyday people doing extraordinary things, following their passions in the renovation and property space. So, let's jump straight into the episode. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, I'm Belinda Smith from Renovate and Real Estate, and welcome to the More Than Renovating podcast. You know that this podcast is all about ordinary people doing their stuff. I shouldn't say ordinary, everyday people doing really, really well in business, in property and in life, their experiences along the way. This is an open sharing platform. And with me today, I'm really chuffed to have Tony Meredith. Tony Meredith is a coach in the business and sales space. And I know that he's done a lot of coaching with people in the property space too. And he's a bit of a specialist in that field as well. So welcome, Tony.
Hey, welcome, Belinda. Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem at all. Let people know where you're from, first of all, what state you're in.
So,
Not what state you're in, what personal state you're in, what state you live in.
I am in the beautiful state of Queensland, Belinda, so I know it's not quite state of origin time, but I can't wait for that time of year. So I'm in Queensland, in Brisbane I am, and have been living grew up in southeast Queensland, have spent a little bit of time outside, but no, southeast Queensland is home.
We connected firstly through various property groups. And I know that you've been a successful property coach or a coach in really moving people and getting them to function at a higher level. And so tell me a little bit about the style of coaching you bring.
Yeah, absolutely. So my coaching is, firstly, my business is Tony Meredith Coaching. It's my name and it's coaching. And so my coaching from a property point of view is all around getting people to take action. So it's about how do we go and turn what is a hobby, so perhaps your clients who start off and enjoy painting, sanding floors, whatever it might be, how do I turn that hobby into something that's actually commercially viable? And so there's that bit, but then there's also I've got all this knowledge, but I'm not acting on the knowledge that I've got. And in between, they call it the knowing-doing gap, right? I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it. And so I'm able to help people close that gap and take enormous action.
What is it that makes some people just pick up something, like in my particular case, it's renovating, pick up renovating and take it to that next level, turn it into a business, flip homes for an income, really see it? And what is it that stops other people from doing the same thing?
Yeah, belief. It's belief. That's the sole word. It's about, for you, when you started, perhaps you had a vision for yourself, something that meant a lot to you, even though you didn't have all the answers, but you had the belief that you could find a way, you could be resourceful, is another terminology. So you figured it out along the way. Doesn't mean you didn't make plenty of mistakes, as we all do, but you had the drive and the ambition to work through those mistakes and recognize that mistakes helped you move forward. I see a lot of people at the other end, Belinda, really get crippled by fear. And it could be a fear of failure. The biggest fear that we have, I believe, is the fear of being criticized or judged by other people. So fear of failure is a big one, but it's the next step beyond that when I fail, people are going to, point the finger at me, tell me I shouldn't have done it, tell me I wasn't good enough, all those types of things. So it really is the fear of being criticized that holds us back. And what's really sad about that is it's not just the overt judgment or criticism we're getting, it's the thought that people are potentially criticizing us. So thinking that someone is criticizing us or thinking that someone's judging us, that act alone can change our outcome. I was with a client yesterday and we were talking about this exact topic where I was saying to him that if I thought that he liked me, then my whole demeanor would change, my posture would change, my physiology would change, I'd have my shoulders back, my head up, and I'd be feeling really confident. But if I thought that he didn't like me, then my head would be down, my voice would be a lot slower, my physiology would be down, and I would potentially be trying to avoid him. And through thought alone, we can change how we act, how we respond. So it really is, belief. But then in the case of where people don't take action, it's about the lack of belief.
So true. And you know what? Thoughts like that aren't supported by data. They're not supported by anything. They're just things in our own heads. I know that when I started my business in the renovation education sector, there were already people in the space, right? And I thought that everybody would think that I would never get it going. And the truth is, I knew that no matter what it took, I was going to get it going in some capacity or other to meet my satisfaction. And I thought that people were going to be critical of me or perhaps waiting for me to fail. And but the truth is that now that I've been going for a little while and have had obvious success to some degree, people are actually the opposite. They've been so supportive and they've been quietly championing me on without me actually thinking about it. So you think that people are perhaps critical and waiting for you to fall flat, and it's actually the opposite. People are kinder than we think. They're like, okay, go for it. I hope you do really, really well. And they're the first people to pat you on the back and say, good job, good job. I've been watching your progress and it's been really cool. So yeah, there's a difference between thoughts and proof, the data.
Look, absolutely. A great example is when people wake up tired. And so if you wake up tired and you say to yourself, someone says, how are you going today? And say, oh, I'm tired. And then you go off to work and someone says to you, how are you going today? So I'm tired. You're constantly reaffirming the fact that you're tired. And so there's a saying, which is be careful what you say to yourself because your mind is listening. So I'm saying, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired. Versus if you've not had enough sleep, for example, don't BS yourself. You haven't had enough sleep. Don't pretend that all of a sudden, I've got this energy, but it's a case of that I've got all the sleep that I need to get me through the day. So now it's like, well, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready to tackle the day. And so again, I'm going to say different things. When I say different things to myself, then I'm going to have a very different outcome. And it's amazing the power of the mind, the power of thoughts. There's a book that's almost 90 years old, which is called Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And it's just as relevant today as it was, back then when Napoleon Hill wrote it. And there's a whole series of other, books and references around thoughts, thinking, etc.
I'm always eternally optimistic. Always. I always think that there's a way that things can happen, or I'll be fine, or something. But sometimes I speak to people and they're the opposite. So what makes us wired in one direction or the other, and can it be changed?
So yes, it can be changed, and some of it's genetics, and some of it's people you hang around. It could be your beliefs are formed when you were, in your adolescence, when you're younger, and based on our parents, the things that our parents told us, and they kept telling us you're not good enough and suppressed our ambition, then that can have an impact. It could be your teachers. It could be your friends in the schoolyard. So all these things can play a role in shaping our beliefs. And then what tends to happen is you do nothing about it. You'll take that through to your adult life, and that will then change your whole perspective of the world. Now, if that has been you, and you have had a tough upbringing and perhaps your parents suppressing you or whatever, then the great news is that you can change. And the great news is that your past doesn't need to equal your future. And so it's about recognizing the fact that, yes, that happened. It's not good, but I can never, ever change it. Yet a lot of people will, dwell and wish that things were different and whatnot, but it can never be changed. And so it's about going, well, that's happened. It is what it is. What do I need to do to slowly but surely start to correct or right some of the wrongs and point me then in the right direction? So it can absolutely be changed. So when they say leopards can't change their spots, they can. They absolutely can. But there's a process. You've got to go through a process, because if you have a certain belief, then your belief is set in your subconscious. And 80-90% of our thoughts every day come from our subconscious. That is, we're not aware of it. And so we've got to go through a process to change that, and not just to change it for one day or two, work on it over and over again and form a different habit. It's all about habits.
Is it comfortable for people to stay set inside their own belief systems, or stay in that state without wanting to change? Or is it kind of just the familiarity of it all? Like, why do people stay there?
So it's how we're motivated. So we're motivated either by seeking pleasure or avoiding pain. And ultimately, the highest form of motivation is the avoidance of pain. And so for a lot of people to change, there's a saying which is that change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the change itself. And so whenever you go and do something different, go do something for the first time, you're not going to be very good at it. That's the reality, right? And so you're going to fumble and stumble and make mistakes, etc. But if you go, well, hang on a second, I feel in more pain being in my situation that I'm in now, and so hence I have enough motivation now to do this new thing. So if you talk about, what it is that you're doing, perhaps I'm seeing renovation as a way to get out. I've got pain of being in my job, getting barked at, living an average life, versus I can see renovation as a way to create wealth, financial freedom, and so on and so forth for myself.
Yeah, I find it astounding when I speak to people. It's really common. And they say, well, I can't afford to either do the renovation or work with you or work with somebody else. And I think we actually can't afford to stay where you are. Like, what is the alternative?
Yeah. And so I say to people, the reason why you can't is the reason why you should, right? In the sense of that, that's the reason why you can't. But then it's not, again, it's not enough driver for them, right? So then it's a case of I'm comfortable. Because to do what you've done and to do what your students do, it takes effort. You have to follow a process. It takes effort. It's not going to happen overnight, but when you stick at it consistently and persistently, you're going to create success for yourself. And you've proven that time and time again. And I can rattle off hundreds of examples, thousands of examples of people that I know as well. So it does take effort. What I find, Belinda, is that people are fascinated with the end result. So that is, I want the bit at the end. And so perhaps I've gone and seen the Forbes top 10 rich list, and I've seen that people in that rich list, they've got property involved in what it is that they do. And I want to do property because I can create wealth for myself. But there's this bit in the middle. And the bit in the middle is the bit that they're not prepared to do. And what it comes back to is, why do you want to do this thing in the first place? So if you just want to go and make money, there is a squillion different ways that you can make money, right? And you might want to get into cryptocurrency. You might want to do share trading, whatever it might be. That's what you're trying to do. But if you want to do renovation, for example, then you need to have some passion about it. You need to, have a drive or a reason to want to do that. And that driver needs to come from within. It's not external, it's within. And when you've got a drive from within, then regardless of what's going on around you, regardless of what's happening outside your world, what, this issue's happened, there's a delay here, that's cost me more, whatever it might be, but I've still got this drive, this passion, this determination to make it happen. So it's about recognizing that I've got to love the journey. I've got to love the process. When I love the journey and love the process, I bound out of bed every day and look forward to doing that thing.
Which takes over the feeling of, I've got to get ready to get ready. Like I get a lot of, I need to do an interior design course first and I just don't feel ready. And I need to learn about this first and then I feel ready. And then I need to do this first and then I'll feel ready. But all of those things you mentioned about bounding out of bed and just getting into something because you're already in it, can take that away. Am I right about the getting ready? Do you strike that a lot when you talk to people?
Yeah, no. So it's called progress beats perfection.
Right.
And it's a case of too many people wait for everything to be lined up perfectly, and the perfect day and the perfect property and the perfect. It's not reality. And so it's, how do you refine a skill? Well, you have a go, right? And you have the courage, fortune favors the brave. You have the courage to get started, but also the mindset to recognize that I am going to make some mistakes along my journey. I am not going to get it right, but I'm also determined to make this happen because of the reasons that are internal to me. And then the first project, you might make a whole lot of mistakes, but then guess what happens in the second project? You learn from the first project, and that's a little bit more efficient. And then you get to the third project and you learn from the second, and so on and so forth. But for all of us, it's about having the courage to start. And the reason that you want to start is you want to get clear on what your why is, clear on what your goal is, and then work on your belief, which I touched on earlier.
Are there any characteristics that stand out to you from working with a lot of people like you have? Are there any certain characteristics that give people an advantage to making it, whatever that might be?
Well, it comes back to clarity. So clarity is a really big one, and that is that you need to be clear on what it is that you're wanting. So I touched on before the three things: why, what, and your belief. So you've got to be clear, right? Because if you say, well, I want to go and create wealth for myself, well, that's incredibly vague. And the old saying is, if you aim at nothing, that's what you're going to end up getting. You're going to get nothing. And so you need to get clear on what it is that you're wanting. There's a whole lot of studies around goal setting, that the clearer that people can be on their goals, then they actually linked the clarity of goal towards remuneration and recognize that people who are clear on their goals have far greater remuneration than those that aren't clear on the goals. So getting clear on the goals, and the process that I use is called start with the end in mind. So everything that we do, we need to start with the end. Now, the end doesn't need to be 10 years' time. It might be 1 year's time, 2 years. It might be 1 month. I work with people who suffer from anxiety. And so for me to sit here and say, let's set a 5-year goal, right? It's like, oh my gosh, so it's too much. But hey, let's set a 1-week goal. Let's set over the next 2 weeks, what are we going to do? So I deal with a lot of people in the property space who really have this aversion to dealing with real estate agents. It's like real estate agents are the enemy, right? And I'm absolutely scared of dealing with them. And so for those people, what we do is we look to go and do one phone call, submit one offer. So I call that +1. And then go back to what I said a bit earlier, progress beats perfection. So if you haven't done a call, make a call. Yes, there's some things that you can do to prepare for that call. Perhaps write down a few pieces of information that you'd like to get out of the call, perhaps a few questions you want to ask, but make the call. And it's going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to feel awkward. But here's the thing, you're going to get to the end of the call and then you go, that wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. And this happens all the time when before we're going to do something, we play this thing out in our mind, but then we go and do it. And it's like, well, that ain't that bad after all, right? And so then it's like, well, I've done one call, let's go and do another one and another one. Or I've gone and submitted one offer, let's go and submit another one and another one.
And then you get to the point where you're talking to real estate agents consistently and they become a part of your business anyway, and they don't seem to be so much of the bad cop, good cop, bad cop. They don't seem to be like that as much. And you get to understand their business more. And then that's something that you can tick off and say, okay, I've conquered that little part of what was fearful for me before, and now it's not. So what's next? What do I need to do next? What can I improve upon next?
Exactly. But the other thing that you can do with that is also then look backwards. So I say to people, look backwards for 3 reasons. So look backwards to learn from a mistake, take the lesson, look backwards to enjoy a happy moment, and look backwards to see how far you've come. Yes, and recognize and have gratitude. And so if you've never done a real estate agent call before, if you've struggled and you do a few in a row and you start to feel a little bit better about yourself, then look back and go, oh my gosh, like in the last week, like I've done 10 calls and I'm feeling so much more confident with that. Like actually pat yourself on the back and recognize that, wow, I've really shifted the needle. And here's the thing, if I've gone and done that, what else can I go and do? What's the thing that's in front of me? Because I've conquered this thing that a week or 2 weeks or a month ago was really frightening me, and I pushed through that. And so it's called success factor modeling, where you say, I did something, I was scared about doing something, and I did that something, and I feel good because I did that something. Now think back to, well, what was it that prompted me to do that in the first place? And why did I lean into that first call? And what was driving me to do that? Now, if I've done this thing over here, I just got to pick up that process and apply it over here, and then just go and do it again with the other thing that's scaring me.
So that's important, to celebrate wins and to lean into the favourable outcomes that you've had to move forward. What happens if someone has had something terrible happen to them in their world, like being bankrupt or bought a dud property before? How do they overcome things that have not gone well for them?
Sure. Well, the reality is you can't change it. That's the first thing I'd say to everybody. And a lot of people spend a lot of time dwelling on the past, and that's a horrible place to be. It's happened, and I've had bad things happen to me, Belinda, and I haven't got long enough today to rattle off all the bad things that have happened to me, right? But there's been plenty of bad things that have happened. But it's a case of, have I learned something from them? 100% I have, right? Have I been, so I've learned some stuff. Have I built some other skills? Perhaps it might be resilience, determination, whatever it might be that I can apply moving forward. I mean, you touched on bankruptcy, for example. There's been plenty of people who've been bankrupt, but yet have gone and moved on to another project or another venture or whatever it might be, and that may then go on and be successful. And so it's to say, well, that wasn't good. Like, let's not pretend that that was rosy. It wasn't rosy, but what did I get out of that situation? And what could I learn from that situation? What can I then apply moving forward? You see, everything that happens in our world, we can apply meaning to it. And so whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, we apply a meaning to that thing. And then whatever meaning I apply to something, and so the most common example is the glass that's got 50% of water in it. Yeah. Some people look at it and say, hey, that's half full, that's optimistic. And others look at it as being, yeah, I know. And the other is being half empty, and hey, that's pessimistic. It's the same glass with the same amount of water in it, but yet two people are coming at it from different angles, and hence we're getting a different perspective, a different meaning on that. So it's about changing the meaning and recognizing that, you know what, yeah, okay, that thing wasn't good, and I went through a tough time, but what did I get out of it? And even in my darkest of darkest days, what are the things that I could draw from that can better serve me moving forward?
We were talking just before this recording about, those poor homeowners who've been impacted by floods, not once, but more than once, and how they pull their socks up and get back to either making choices. Do they stay in the same house? Do they repair that house? Do they move out altogether? And so is the concept the same?
Yeah, the concept's the same. Look, and not for one moment do I think that any of that is easy for people.
Yeah,
it would be incredibly robotic of me to say otherwise. But it's a case of that at some stage it's happened, and the saying, you've got to deal with the card, handle the cards you've been dealt, or something along those lines. And it's a case of they're the cards that those people got dealt. It's horrible, it's dreadful, but it's about, okay, well, I've got my life. So what are the positive things that I can get out of that? Well, I've got my life. I've got my life. Perhaps I've got my health. Perhaps I was able to salvage a few belongings. Other people maybe have lost their life or don't have their health or lost everything or whatever. So I've got some things that I can rebuild again. And the other thing that you can take from that is through the experience is the resilience that it can provide you, the strength, the character building that those events provide you. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that, we have a flood happen and then next day it's like, righto, let's move forward. That's not reality. But at some stage you have to recognize that by fixating on what's happened, by fixating on that poor, sad, negative event that's happened, how is that serving me? And what are the opportunities that I'm missing out on? I call it an opportunity cost. What am I missing out on because I'm looking backwards? And then how do I go and correct my thinking and start to go, okay, well, let's now dust ourselves off and let's start to move in a new direction or in a forwards direction.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Terrible situation, and takes a lot of energy and a lot of digging deep to move forward. But as a species, we're very resilient, aren't we? Humans are resilient, and we can overcome anything.
Well, not just overcome, we adapt. So we have the ability to adapt. So things happen all the time, and we're constantly adapting. And you think about, the evolution, or the change. Think about the last 10, 20 years and all the change that's going on in the world, and we just keep adapting. And we'll continue to keep adapting as well. And bad things will continue to happen, And so it's a case of, but how do I help myself move forward? How do I deal with that? How do I learn the lesson from that to be better prepared for next time, whatever it might be? But I've got a couple of choices. And one is that I can stay stuck and I can stay fixated on that event, and I can be incredibly sad and upset, or I can say, okay, enough is enough is enough. And I have to get moving forward. And ultimately, that overpins all of this is that we have one life. And so we have one life, and it's about, well, how do I maximize the life that I've got? And so, for me, I learned this in 2015 when I went through my own journey. And the book that I read was Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm not sure if you've read that.
Yeah, I have. It's a great book.
In chapter 2, he talks about begin with the end in mind. And in the chapter, he talks about your eulogy. And what do you want people to say about you when you've passed on? And the first time I read that, I really struggled with it because I was struggling to deal with my own mortality. And so I put the book down. I'm not going to read that. For whatever reason, the universe, whatever it might be, I picked it up a couple of weeks later and I read it again, and I started to resonate with what he was saying. And so then I thought about myself, and it's like, well, at the time I was overweight. I had a dreadful relationship with my wife and my kids. Didn't have the wealth that I wanted. I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I thought, my gosh, well, if that's my eulogy, that's terrible, right? That's a shocker. And so it's about, well, I've got to go and do something about it. And so then the process begins, and it's not about changing things instantaneously, but it's a journey. All of the life is a journey. And it's about recognizing that I've got to be better today than I was yesterday, and I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. But as long as I'm, again, progression beats perfection each and every time.
So to reach the heady heights of success, whatever that might be, all of us are different and our goals are different. I'm going to throw a few things at you. Is it luck? Is it intelligence? Is it resilience? Is it tenacity? Is it communication? Like, what makes people really get there?
Sure. So there's no doubt that there is a small element of luck to these things, right? So sometimes people can be lucky, but also you make your own luck, right? You put yourself in the position to make your own luck. Look, for me, it's about not giving up. If you give up, game over. Yeah. And so it's a case of they talk about that there's two guarantees in life, and they'll say, death and taxes are the two guarantees. Well, what I say is there's a third, and the third guarantee that I give people is that if you stop, then you'll never, ever, ever, ever achieve the thing that you're wanting to achieve. Now, if you keep going, I can't guarantee you that you're going to get there, but you give yourself every chance of success. So it's about, to me, the big thing, Belinda, is to keep going. Napoleon Hill, in the book that I referenced earlier, he talks about 3 feet from gold. And what he means by that is that the majority of society will finish their lives 3 feet from gold. So they'll just fall short of their goal. Now, here's the thing. If we knew that our goal was just 3 feet away, then you would be on your hands and you would be digging, you'd be doing all you could to get your goal, right? Because it's there, but we don't know. And that's the beautiful thing about life, is that there's uncertainty. And so that's where then faith and belief come in. It's like, okay, well, I'm doing a process. And when I do my process consistently and persistently, then I give myself every chance of success.
I find that a lot in the property sector, where people have had a deal not go so favourably for them in one way or another, or they've done a renovation and they haven't made the profit that they expected. Mm-hmm. And so they stop. And I think you're actually realising your loss, or you're staying stuck, or you're calling it quits, and you think that that's all there is, when there is that pot of gold, and you'll take all the experiences with you that you've learnt along the way. People devalue those very, very quickly, whereas they should be thinking, when you do something a second time, you do them so much better. And so how do you motivate people to get back in the game?
So again, coming up with what's in front of you. So you've got to have something that you bound out of bed for. If you haven't got something you're bound out of bed for, then you don't have any purpose. You don't have any focus on something that's in front of you. And again, if you're dwelling on that opportunity, if you've gone and lost a lot of money in a project, or if it didn't make the money that you wanted, let's just talk about that bit. It didn't make the money that you wanted, but did you make money? Yes, you did. Did you learn some amazing things? Yes, you did.
Yeah.
My gosh. Could you apply those things moving forward and accelerate your journey, or be more efficient and effective next time? I reckon you could. And so it's a case of going, well, sure, it didn't quite meet your expectations, but then you learned some stuff. And that's a case of, now I've got to have something that's in front of me. When we don't have something in front of us, that's the issue. And I see this a lot with people in sports, for example. I've played sport, and a lot of sports we tend to sort of finish those. This is the top level I'm talking about. We finish those sports at around 30, early 30s, etc. And if they haven't got anything to look forward to, then all of a sudden they find themselves in a really dark space, coming from one of being admired, getting paid big money, all those types of things, to nothing. And so you've got to have something in front of you. And I would always encourage people to come up with something in front of them before they achieve the big goal they're going for. So what I mean by that, let's say it's climbing a mountain, and that mountain is just an analogy, but you're climbing the mountain. Before you reach the peak of the mountain, at the top of the mountain, the summit, start to think about what's the next thing. So when I get this to the top of my mountain, I've then got another mountain in front of me, and another mountain, and another mountain, as opposed to I've got to the top of the mountain, now what? And it's in that now what that I have space and I have void. And in that void, then I can, my mind can tend to take me to some very dark places. So it's always about having something that's in front of us to look forward to work towards.
How important is it for all of us to have something in our lives that people associate us with, or that we're proud of?
So if we are worried about what other people are going to think and say about us,
Right.
then you're operating in a really dangerous place.
Yeah.
Because you're someone who you can't control, you're reliant on them patting you on the back, thinking you're a great person, etc. This might come across selfish to people, but it has to be about personal priority, and it's about self. And when you are in a place when you are focused on yourself and your own emotions and the things that you can control, then that to me leads to phenomenal success. So I'll give you an example in the property space. People going to find a deal will say there's a part of that process where it's in your control, but there's a part that's not. The part that's not in your control is whether someone accepts your offer or not. And so what we tend to do is we have our whole emotional well-being linked to whether or not someone accepts our offer or not. And if someone says yes, then I feel amazing. But if someone says no, then I feel dreadful. If I have a high, I'm going to have a really low. And so the piece is then I've got to fixate on what is it that is within my control. So what's within my control? The number of agents that I call, the number of offers that I put in, the number of letters that I send if I'm going to go direct to the market, whatever it might be. These are all things that are within my control. And so it's about recognizing that I want to have my emotional well-being attached to the things that I can control, as opposed to being reliant on what someone thinks of me or whatever. Because when they think great of me, go back to what I was saying earlier, when someone thinks that I'm a champion, I feel great. But if that person changes their view, for example, or if I don't hear from them for a while and then I start to go, oh, I haven't heard from them, and the stories go off and I go, oh my gosh, they mustn't like me anymore or whatever, then I start to feel bad. There's a saying which is, I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. And what that means, and most people sadly live their life by this, the last line, I am who I think you think I am. If I think that you like me, then I feel awesome. But if I think that you don't like me, then I feel dreadful. You may not have even said anything to me. That's right. But based on thought alone, I'm changing. So I know that was a long-winded response, and we did say before this session that I talk a lot, but it's a case of really work hard on having control of your emotions and having your emotional well-being determined based on the things that sit within your control.
How much joy do you get seeing someone who is stuck, like completely stuck, actually make those moves towards, well, their goals, whatever those goals are?
Oh, look, it's inspiring. It's I get inspired by a lot of my clients, and so it's great to have a positive outcome. But then also what I've learned, again, go back to what I just said, I've also taught myself over many, many years that I don't want to have too big of a high. I want to celebrate and be there with them. But then also there are clients that may not get unstuck. And so for me, I have to go back and say, well, have I followed my process? Have I done all the things that I know within my training, all the strategies? And sometimes, Belinda, people just don't do the things that you want them to do. And it's a case of, from a course point of view or from an educational point of view, it's like the course is amazing, right? I work with a lot of franchises, and they buy into the model, they buy into the systems, the processes. The systems and the processes are amazing.
Yeah.
But if the individual doesn't put into practice the systems and the process and do the things consistently, the individual won't have success. It's not the franchise issue. It's not the franchise, operations manual. It comes back to the individual. So my point of that is that, yes, I'm so happy when my clients are successful, but if they're not successful, I'm happy with the sense that I've gone through my process. Yes, I always work hard to get the right outcome for my clients, but sometimes, not sometimes, the client still has to go and do the heavy lifting.
Do the heavy lifting, otherwise nothing ever happens. And to that point, who are the strugglers? Is it people who put others before themselves always? Like, I speak to a lot of mums, and they're getting ready to get ready will be the kids have to be finished year 12, or I'll do this when mum's feeling better. And like it's our natural instinct to want to care for everybody else around us. But is that, do people use that as an excuse?
Of course they do. And what that means is that I'm putting myself last. And what that means is that I'm not worth it. And even though you may not say that and think that, these are the things that effectively what's happening. And, when you hop on an airplane, what happens when they talk about the oxygen mask coming from above?
Yeah.
They say to put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
So for all those people that you're referring to, put yourself first, because again, we have one life. So yes, you may be a mum or a parent. It's not just a mum thing. You may be a parent. And yes, you want to make sure that your kids have the very best chance, best opportunities, etc. But what about you? What about you? What about the things that are important to you? And, you don't want to go and suppress your own dreams, your own aspirations. Now, there's a balance here too, right? Because you do have a role to play. And so it's not a case of, well, I'm just going to go off and do all this, do this renovating thing and forget about you guys over there.
Forget about the kids.
Yeah, just the dinner's in the freezer. Just figure it out, right? So it's, but yeah, correct. But there's also, it comes back to, does it mean so much to me?
Yeah.
So if this thing is important enough to me, if I'm clear on what it is that I want, then it's a case of, well, I'm going to make it happen. And maybe it comes down, well, it might just take me a little bit longer because I've got multiple priorities. So I've got a role of a parent, but we all have multiple roles within our life. Like all of us wear different hats. Yeah. And so it's a case of, well, how do I make this work within the time that I have available? But as the old saying says, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, that's my greatest saying. And I also say, I'm really harsh. Sometimes I was 24 hours in a day, because I know that the busier we are, the more we can actually fit in. And you might have heard that too. If you get rid of all the fluff, you get rid of things that don't really matter or move you, and you just start to do what's most important. And you really have to look at each hour, each minute, each task, and get things done. And I can be brutal.
No, but there's actually a law. So there's a law that is called Parkinson's law. So for those people who aren't aware of it, look it up. But what Parkinson's law says is based on the time frame that you give yourself to complete something, you will complete it in that time frame.
Agreed.
So if you say, I've got a task and I'm going to do it in the next 2 months, then you will adjust your effort and you will finish it and you'll just trip over the line in 2 months' time. But if you say to yourself, I've got to do that task in 2 weeks, then you will adjust your effort and you'll fit it in the 2 weeks' time. And so it comes down to time mastery. So I don't call it time management, I call it time mastery, and going through a whole range of processes to master the time. And you're right. When you talk about, well, there's 24 hours in a day, there's 168 hours in any given week. And yes, there's going to be time when you're sleeping. And yes, there's going to be time when you're working, but there's also going to be a lot of time when, if you challenged yourself and had a good, honest, review and audit of how you spent your time, there'll be TV watching, social media consumption, and a whole range of things that you'll be doing that you could be reinvesting that time on something more productive. And this is not about having less sleep either. So, there was a few years ago when there was a bit of a movement around sleep less. Sleep is so important, and there's studies coming out now where a lack of sleep is impacting, cardiovascular disease and all sorts of other, cancers, etc., being attributed to the lack of sleep. Sleep is important. Sleep's not the issue, right? Sleep for 8 hours, sleep for 7 hours, whatever is your thing. But if you're sleeping for 8 hours, that means you've got 16 hours awake. And what are you doing in the 16 hours that you're awake? That's where the opportunity is, not necessarily sacrificing on sleep.
I agree. And your 16 hours when you're awake, if you've had a decent 8 hours, well, in my circumstance, I can actually think more clearly. I can be more efficient. When I've had lack of sleep, I start to get really, really tired. That's not to say I've never pulled all-nighters. I think we've all done those.
Oh, of course.
Here and there occasionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you might load up on coffee or whatever it is. You might go and, do some exercise to energize yourself. And again, think about what you're saying to yourself. Like I said earlier in this conversation, if you sit there and go, I've had 6 hours and I'm tired, and everyone you talk to, you're telling you're tired, well, then you're just reaffirming that. So, but it's about the wake time, Belinda, that's the key. And again, if something means that much to you, then you will find a way. And the most successful people that I see in the property space are those that have a clear why, they have a clear what being their goals, and they have belief. They mightn't have done that thing yet. So whether it be in renovating or developing or co-living or whatever their strategy is, but they have the belief in themselves to go, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to make this happen. Somehow, don't know how, but I'm going to make it happen.
And the truth is, all the strategies are proven to work.
Correct.
So if the strategies are proven to work and we're all the same human beings on this planet, then, it's equal opportunity for all.
It's not the strategy is not the issue.
No.
That's not the issue. Now, do some strategies work better in certain areas? Yes. Do some strategies work better in certain areas at different times? Yes, absolutely. But you and I would know plenty of people with each of the respective strategies that we could say, here is someone who's been successful. It's not the strategy. It's about find a strategy that fits with you, have a reason to want to do that strategy. It's not the end. It's not the bling bling, the fancy house, the fancy car, etc. at the end. It's this strategy means something to me so that every day I'm going to bound out of bed and I'm looking forward to doing that thing. It has some real meaning behind it. I'm excited to go and do that strategy. As opposed to so it's like, the clearer you are on your why, it's like a magnet, right? And so what I see happen is that the 1st of January, people go and set goals for themselves, but they're setting goals not based on a real why. It's like society says, set a goal. And so then we'll use willpower and we'll be pushing towards this goal. So I might want to go and lose some weight or, get a promotion or whatever. And I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing, and eventually I run out of steam. Whereas when there's something that's in front of me that's pulling me towards it, that means so much to me, then it feels effortless. Yes, there's hard work involved. I'm not saying that there's not, there is, but it just feels like it's where I'm meant to be. And I love doing that thing. If it's renovating, then I love doing the renovating.
Yeah, it's like me and a paintbrush. It excites me. I enjoy it.
Exactly, and it's your thing. And so when there's something that you look forward to, well, then you want to do that thing. You want to do less of the things that you don't look forward to and more of the things that you do. And so it's about finding the strategy that's going to fit for you, because they all work. And in fact, that was one of the very first bits of advice that I got when I started to get involved in the adding of value on properties. I'd had, buy and hold properties previously, but in 2015, that was the advice. All strategies work. It's just find the one that you can resonate with, that it's going to fit with the person that you are.
Yeah. And then it lights you up. If you're in the right space, then it lights you up, and happiness is everything. All right. So for a personal question, who's been the most important influence on your life and your career?
So firstly, my dad, and not just because he's my dad. So that seems like an easy answer, but my dad was a small business owner. And so my dad went from working in the hospital and then transitioning into small business. And so seeing him go through that, seeing the struggles, you talk about lack of sleep. He used to have a significant amount of lack of sleep. He was grumpy to be around because of that. But seeing the transition and what he did to be able to do that, and seeing him from an inspirational point of view, but then also from a how can I help more people like that? Because there's a lot of people who are very good at a particular task or skill or whatever, but then turning into a business, they really struggle with that side of things because there's so many elements to running a business. And so that was someone, like my dad initially. And so he's one. Another person is Gary Vaynerchuk. I absolutely love the guy.
That's always funny.
So I've got, so that's a photo up on there. That's a photo of me and Gary back in 2018. So that was a big event here in Brisbane. And I ordinarily, when I go to those events, I normally get the cheapest seat, and I'm sit about a kilometre from the stage. And my wife knew he was coming into town, and she said, just do it, get the front row. So I bought the front row, got to meet him. There's the photo. And so just his whole approach to things. He's not everyone's cup of tea. I accept that. But certainly if you can look past the brashness of, the guy from New Jersey, then his underlying message is incredibly powerful.
Oh, his underlying message is all, if you want it bad enough, you'll go make it happen, and be resourceful and be resilient, and all of the things that you've spoken about today.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. When you found the thing that you want, if it means so much to you, where there's a will, there's a way, you're going to do it. It's not going to be easy. You are going to have an enormous amount of obstacles to overcome and challenges and difficulties, and that is coming. If you think it's not, it's coming. But it's about, this thing means so much to me, and I'm going to figure it out and be resourceful.
So you talk about, or you coach people who are starting their own businesses or really accelerating in the property space. But those challenges that you just mentioned then, it's going to be hard, you're going to have some bad days, all that kind of stuff. That actually happens when you work for someone. And I'd much rather get my own thing happening where there's better opportunity for income than facing those same kind of challenges working for a boss I don't particularly like or doing the tasks that I don't enjoy.
Look, I agree, but the challenge there, Belinda, is go back to, why are people motivated? It's the avoidance of pain. It's the seeking of pleasure.
Yes.
And a lot of people, the saying is that the biggest destroyer of a great life is a good life.
Yeah.
And so people who have a good life, they're comfortable. Yeah, I don't really like my job, but you know what? It pays me a wage, whatever. And that's the thing. I'm not prepared to stretch myself, to challenge myself because I'm comfy. And what's going to happen, unfortunately, is that those people are going to get to the end of life and they're going to look back and they're going to go, I should have done that thing that I wanted to do when I was 30 or 40 or 50 or even 60, right? That thing, I should have gone and done that thing. I should have taken the plunge. And there's so many ways that you don't have to, leave your job instantaneously, like through renovating. You can migrate your way out. You can do something small, get some proof of concept, do something a bit larger, so on and so forth. But there's ways that you can, migrate your way out. But yes, the people are comfortable. And you know what? This used to be me. Like I'm coming at this from a personal experience. I used to be that guy who was comfortable. I got paid well for what I did. I wasn't fulfilled, but I was comfortable. And then it took for me to, have the courage to do something different. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy. It continues to be filled with, challenges. But I also have a drive, a determination, a persistence, resilience, etc., tenacity to keep moving forward.
Oh, me too. We are on the same page.
We are.
We're twins.
Yeah, we are.
Excellent. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, Tony. I know that listeners will get a lot out of that. I know that they'll resonate too with a lot that you have said today. If anybody would like to work with Tony directly, you can absolutely connect with him. Tony Meredith. What is it? .com?
No, TonyMeredithCoaching.com.au. Yeah, that's okay. Put the coaching on as well. So TonyMeredithCoaching.com.au, and it's the same in various social media, Facebook's, Instas. It's exactly the same. So please reach out. If you've got any questions, if there's any way that I can help people, then please reach out. I'm more than happy to help.
In closing, I'll say nothing hurts more than regret. So let's get going, guys. If you're feeling like you really need to take it up a notch, either in the property space or in the business space, then reach out to either one of us. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Belinda.